Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make two fun cards, and I got a question for you. To mask or not to mask? That is the question. Whether it is nobler to make one-layer cards with lots of masked elements or to cut them out and glue them on separately. That is the question. Well, we are going to use some stamps from our sponsor, topflightstamps.com. These stamps are all by Quetzalcraft, and they work really well together, whether you want to mask an image or you want to do some fussy cutting. I tend to be in the camp mask myself, but sometimes it's just not going to work out right, just like this image here of the couch. Now, if maybe I can mask it, but when you mask, you have to start with your front images first. That would mean I'd have to stamp these ladies first, approximate where they're going to sit on the couch, make sure I don't ink up the chairs they're already sitting on, then make a mask, cover them up, stamp the couch on top, and I just thought there were way too many opportunities for error there, and it'd be better off just to stamp everything out separately and color them and then cut them out. So that's why I chose on this card to do some fussy cutting. However, sometimes you have instances where masking would just be so much easier in the long run. I started off with this frame stamp. This is actually a stamp by Darkroom Door, and I will link that up in the video description as well so you can find it, as well as all the Quetzalcraft stamps that I'm using. And since I've got these beautiful rectangular cells here, I can easily use Post-it tape or Post-it notes to mask them off. And that's what I'm going to do. I really thought this stamp set of all these funky barnyard critters were so fun. And I've actually got a kid in mind I'm going to send this card to, because I just thought the expressions on their faces are just adorable. This chicken just totally cracks me up. But you can see how I could just take those same pieces of Post-it tape and move it around, block off each cell, so I can just stamp each person or each animal in its cell. So their masking is going to be so much easier than stamping all these out separately, cutting them into squares, and then gluing them on a background. You, of course, could do that, but I think it's nice to know different ways to achieve the same effect, so you can choose what's going to best suit your needs. For me, this was super easy, and I really like the way they're kind of all in that kind of Brady Bunch frame, kind of laughing at each other. I thought that was just a lot of fun. Now I'm going to keep the coloring very simple in this card. I'm using some watercolors that I've had for quite a while, and I had a little interesting happening here. I was stamping on the back side of Arteza watercolor paper because the back side's smooth and the front side is rough. And I've used it with their brush pens before, and it works great. I don't think I've ever actually used watercolor on the back side of their paper before, and it did want to kind of puddle a little bit. Now I'm not sure if it's because these are a Japanese style of watercolor, and maybe it wants to repel on the paper a little bit. It ends up being just fine, but I thought it was kind of interesting how the effect that I got. But the reason I chose these paints was because it has some metallics, which I thought would be kind of pretty to put in the plant pot and into the lady's hair. And it also has some neon colors, which I wanted to use in the barnyard card. So I figured if I could have one set that does it all, that would work really well for me. I got a little dark with the skin tones here, but one thing I did find about the backside of that Arteza watercolor paper was that I could just kind of keep lifting away with my brush until I got the skin tone that I wanted. So I find it's a very forgiving paper for card making, because you have that smooth backside. And like I said before, it worked really well with my brush markers, my water-based brush markers, not alcohol. It wouldn't be good for that, but it worked really well with my watercolor markers in the past, so I use it a lot for card making because of that. And I guess with watercolor paint, I'm just going to need to be mindful not to use it too watery, or it will kind of repel. I also want to go right ahead and color these barnyard critters, and you can see I got that neon paint there, because I think it's kind of fun when you're doing a card that may be sent to a kid to just throw in those neons. And with a card, now neon watercolor is notoriously fugitive. Neon, any kind of paint, is notoriously fugitive, and fugitive means to run away. The color will run away if you hang it in the light for too long. So I wouldn't want to play with these colors on a piece of fine art, but for card making, it's fun. It's fun to use, and it's a great, I don't know, I think it's great expression to bring out those fun colors on a card, something that's not meant to last 100 years. Now, I wanted to make my colors a little bit more intense, especially on this this card here with the ladies. I wanted some shadowing on the couch and on the dress, so I just grabbed my colored pencils. You could use whatever you want. I've got my Polychromos and Color Soft on the rack on my table downstairs in my studio. So that's what I grabbed, but please use what you have because you don't need fancy expensive colored pencils to do this. And then you got to go and cut out all of these elements because I have to cut the ladies off of their chairs so they can sit on the couch. That will take a few minutes, so just be warned. I thought about doing this on my scan and cut machine, but because it has the chairs, it's going to cut out around the chairs, and plus this is 140-pound watercolor paper, and I really baby my scan and cut machine. I just do regular like 80-pound cardstock with it because the blades are kind of expensive and I'm still in my first blade, so obviously my conservation methods are working. I found that with this paper I was better off to use a less absorbent brush, so this is just a little, I would say, 3/8 inch flat brush, and that worked really well to get the right amount of paint without too much water. And now I'm just layering up some papers on my card bases to make the card. Now for the ladies, where I cut it out and I'm gluing it down, I tried some paper. I wanted to do some crazy wallpaper in the background, but it just totally drowned out all my stamped images. So I decided to use the B-sides of some of this paper by Heidi Grace Designs because it actually worked better with my colored images. You got to be careful when you are cutting, like fussy cutting and paper piecing, that you don't go too crazy with some of your patterns or it can just be chaos. So that's why I used with these more muted colors in like tone on tone patterns. You'll notice the curtains are red on red, the floor is brown on brown, though the background yellow is yellow on yellow. So doing monotone patterns when you are doing some kind of cut and piece stamping, it makes it look a lot better. It makes it so your stamping can stand out and you don't kind of lose all that hard work you put into it. Not that I spent that much time coloring, but still I did spend some time coloring and cutting, and I want my ladies to stand out there. And also, by not masking, by actually cutting out and placing your elements down, you can pop them up with some dimensional adhesive, and you can also make sure they're situated just right. And I really love the diorama effect that I got with my popped up ladies there on the couch. Now, this is going to be more of a simpler card because I masked it. I got to do it in one layer. And I chose this paper in the background. It's from the same collection as the paper I used on the ladies, but I like this cloud background because I could think of, like, what are these animals thinking? They're probably like just chitter-chattering, right? And so I thought it'd be fun to turn these clouds into thought bubbles and just throw a few little elements like, hi, howdy, yippee, hey, you know, just, can you imagine what these critters are just like gabbing about in the barnyard? And that's what I was thinking about when I did this card. I just wanted to be kind of like a fun, encouragement, happy, just hello type of card. And that's what I did there. I did decorate the card front on its own before I stuck it down onto the card base because I have the tendency to kind of smudge things, and I wanted my white border to be nice and clean. And on the inside of this card, I used one of the sentiments that came from Craft. I love that all of their stamp sets work together, and I love today is the perfect day to be happy. I thought that would just be a fun card you could send at any time. And I did use a few simple buttons for embellishments just because I felt like the card needed something. I didn't want to go overboard, but I just wanted a little like pop of color in the margin since I did choose pretty bland paper. So there you have it, a couple fun cards, and one with masking and one without. Check out our sponsor, TopFlightStamps.com, to find these Craft stamps. They all work so well together and they are so fun to use. Let me know in the comments below whether you plan on masking more or fussy cutting more. I love to know what people enjoy more so that when I do tutorials, I can tailor some techniques to what you're interested in. So thanks so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you're not already a subscriber so you won't miss an upload. And thanks again for watching. Till next time, happy crafting!